He was supposed to grow old, to feel the soft weight of his daughter's arm at every milestone, to watch the graying temples grow more prominent in photographs on friends' walls. Malcolm Jamal Warner, bright star, household name, child of television's golden era, was supposed to have decades left. He was supposed to take a final bow to roaring applause, one last curtain call for the millions who grew up with his laughter echoing through cramped apartments and sunlit kitchens. But something in the world shifted, something cold and calculated, and Malcolm's name suddenly vanished from the living room lexicon, erased in a silence that didn't just hover, it suffocated. Where there should have been stories of his next act, there was only a hollow hush, a pause as awkward as it was sinister. It began as rumors always do. A cloud of confusion, an official statement so bland, so overly neat, that anyone who'd ever loved a child felt their gut twist at the words. It was an accident. A family vacation, a peaceful beach in Costa Rica, supposedly the happiest place for a man burnt out by fame, became the backdrop for a nightmare no mother should ever live. On the night the world learned the news, there were no flashing warning lights, just a simple update. Malcolm Jamal Warner has died, aged 54, drowning accident, no foul play suspected. In those words lived the first insult. Because every mother knows the sound of her child's voice when something's wrong. She can hear anguish even in a whispered hello. Pamela Warner was no different. Her world shrank to that one endless evening, replaying Malcolm's final voicemail until the phone was slick with tears. There was nothing peaceful about his tone, nothing gentle. His last words sounded like static between lightning storms. "Mom, if something happens, make them listen." No policeman, no insurance agent, no coroner could explain away the unease churning in Pamela's chest as she packed up the leftovers of a life, Malcolm's old winter coat, with its secret stitched-in pocket she'd nearly missed. Years passed. The world moved on, but questions went unanswered. Why did the records show only basic autopsy notes, with huge blocks redacted? Why did the vacation villa staff swear they saw a stranger in black, but refused to give statements on the record? Why, above all, could Pamela not stop dreaming of water dark as ink and a voice whispering, "Tell them the truth, Mom"? Time gave her nothing but more painful reminders. Reruns of Malcolm as Theo on TV, his laugh playing on an endless loop in her mind. Tabloids filled with shallow retrospectives, but no one daring to utter the words she knew in her bones. This was no accident. But fate or something deeper had plans for the truth. It came with a USB, no bigger than a thumbnail, stitched deep inside Malcolm's favorite coat, the one Pamela used to patch for him every winter. The envelope was crumpled and yellowed, as if Malcolm had touched it every day he owned it. "In case something happens to me," written in his cramped scrawl. Her fingers hardly worked as she slotted the drive into her ancient laptop, the screen blurring with her tears. Dozens of folders, each labeled in a code only Malcolm would know. Sunset, Shadow Network, Echo. Then at the bottom, a video file named simply Final. She played them in order, not daring to skip. It was a trove of digital terror. Confidential studio memos outlining damage control cycles, scanned NDAs between Malcolm and TV, royalty, text logs with executives laced with veiled threats, offshore wire transfers tied to shell corporations, embed codes pointing to erased news clips. As she read, Pamela's skin prickled. A documentary of how to bury truth right on her kitchen table. Then the centerpiece, a grainy video, barely 2 minutes, but the weight of a lifetime. Malcolm sits, eyes rimmed red, voice barely a whisper. "If you're watching this, I probably didn't make it by choice. Or maybe someone didn't leave me the choice." He lays out what he's uncovered, a machine, he says, built for two things: protect money and erase threats. "They don't silence you with threats," his voice cracks. "They silence you with erasure. Make it so even your friends doubt whatever happened. Rewrite your story down to the last chapter." The final words: "Mom, never stop. You're the only one who'll care enough to see past the lies." Pamela lost her breath. Her son, always the protector in childhood, had left her the torch in adulthood. And as much as it broke her in pieces, she knew she could never let the truth drown with him. So she did what mothers have always done. She became a force of nature. Armed with the drive, she marched the evidence to the Department of Justice, bracing herself for stone faces and dismissive shrugs. She waited, alone and afraid, as weeks crawled by with no word. Until one night, her phone buzzed with a single anonymous message. "Check the news." She did. Across every channel, breaking banners flashed. "Federal investigation into death of Malcolm Jamal Warner confirmed. Bill Cosby named as person of interest." Suddenly, the private agony went public. Paparazzi poured into her cul-de-sac. Reporters crowded her sidewalk, desperate for a comment. Social feeds exploded, hashtags trending worldwide. "I justice for Malcolm," I expose the machine, "Our truth, not silence." Fans built digital memorials, posters on fences, murals twisting through city blocks, Malcolm's portrait, candles lined beneath the words, "He didn't drown, he was drowned." Pamela watched the world shift from skepticism to outrage, and for the first time she realized she wasn't fighting alone. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, chaos gripped Hollywood. Top studios purged files, PR teams switched tactics by the hour, talent agents kept their phones off. No one had believed the machine could be exposed, let alone dismantled. But it wasn't just Pamela's word now. It was data, files, proof too detailed to fake. Within 48 hours, a federal warrant was issued for Bill Cosby. Within 72, police cars trailed his black SUV through a frenzy of flashing cameras as he entered the courthouse, stone-faced, surrounded by federal agents who looked as shaken as the world felt watching them. This was no movie script. It was reality, raw and unresolved, and it was happening live. Across the city, whispers changed tenor, as if hearing Pamela and Malcolm's story unlocked a secret registry. Former studio assistants, legal aides, late-night show producers, even a retired security guard, all suddenly began speaking up, some leaving anonymous tips, some standing before microphones for the very first time. One trembling producer told a reporter, "We were told not to touch Malcolm's last footage. We were told it couldn't air no matter what. But he was close to exposing something. I didn't know what, but we all felt the danger." In days, leaks flooded the web. Snippets of Malcolm's video, screen grabs of NDAs, blurred screenshots of internal emails repeating the same chilling phrase, "Crisis management. If containment fails, redirect through tragedy." At each step, Pamela watched, at once terrified and vindicated, as the story took on a life of its own. The federal investigation snowballed faster than anyone predicted. Regulators pored over the digital archive now nicknamed the Warner Files. Journalists tracked connections between shell companies, NDAs, and a shadowy network of lawyers, fixers, and law enforcement. The centerpiece of the investigation was a memo dated June 18, 2025, just 2 days before Malcolm's death. Its subject line, "Crisis Containment, Warner Situation Escalating." Inside, executives outlined calculated steps to discredit Malcolm, suggest mental health struggles, leak tabloid rumors, slow-walk police responses. The darkest line in the file? If containment fails, tragedy is a viable redirect. The ocean remains the cleanest optic. Pamela's hands shook as she read, each evidence point another nail in a coffin she hadn't fully accepted yet. Radio hosts began discussing the silence machine, a 32-page document that mapped out exactly how to erase not just a career, but a person, from leaking staged scandals, planting doctored videos, all the way down to operational extraction with chillingly vague descriptions. Malcolm had found all of this. He'd cataloged every step, annotated every risk, building what investigators would later call the most systematic roadmap for cover-up culture in entertainment history. But just as quickly as evidence leaked, so too did the pushback. Cosby's legal team spun the story as best they could, claiming hackers had forged the files, blaming Pamela for orchestrating an elaborate smear campaign, trying to counteract the groundswell of public doubt with doubt of their own. Yet the evidence kept coming, as if the truth itself had become contagious. One especially harrowing voicemail surfaced, Malcolm recording himself as he hurried along a dark sidewalk. "They said I had a choice, be quiet and live. Or speak and, well, here we are." A forced, joyless chuckle. "I'm tired of running. If this is it, let them know I tried." Pamela made the clip public with a caption, "My son didn't leave. He was taken by silence, by money, by people who never thought they'd be caught." Internet sleuths went into overdrive, analyzing the files, matching metadata, building timelines that backed up every painful claim. As the Cosby trial kicked off behind courthouse doors not open to cameras, the drama inside played out with stakes that felt almost biblical. Pamela, with her son's final letter clutched in one fist, had become the face of a movement much bigger than one family's grief. The prosecution summoned wave after wave of witnesses previously silenced by fear or by cash. Assistants, production editors, network lawyers. Their stories echoed the same rot. We were told not to ask questions. We were told to follow orders. We were paid to look away. The bombshell moment came not from a suit or a producer, but from a man no one recognized right away, a former Cosby bodyguard whose voice shook as he spoke. I was assigned to watch Malcolm's every move, not for his safety, but to make sure he didn't have time or privacy to finish what he started. On the day he died, I was told, "Stand down, it's handled. That's all. That's what I know." Gasps tore through the courtroom. Even the judge blanched. The decades-old machinery of silence was tearing itself apart under the pressure of truth. Outside, something rare happened. Mourning turned into momentum. Candles glowed beneath banners painted with Malcolm's face. Protesters sang, cried, shouted, but above all, remembered. Universities collected Malcolm's files as national archives. Activists began drafting the Warner Act, legislation to force entertainment companies to disclose contractual hush agreements. Even rival stars stepped from the shadows. A sitcom actor posted, "Malcolm always told me something was wrong. I shrugged him off. I wish I hadn't." A famous former co-star broke down streaming live. "He tried to save us all and we let him walk alone." Each confessional built a sense of surreal urgency, the story stretching from heartbreak into full-on reckoning. The final collapse of the silence machine arrived weeks into the trial. Another anonymous package made its way to Pamela's home. This time a hard drive, heavier than the first, stamped "buried." Inside, she found not just email chains, but operational diagrams for a protocol called ECHO. Every part of the process was spelled out, from paying police chiefs overseas, to tracking whistleblowers' relatives, to orchestrating staged tragedies and ghosting journalists who asked the wrong questions. And at the top, Cosby's initials, each document stamped with ego and entitlement. The DOJ moved quickly, releasing an unprecedented amount of evidence into the public domain to ensure nothing would disappear. Entire networks went off air, PR firms quit industry giants, legal advisors deleted their profiles, and the world watched live as silence itself became impossible. In her living room, surrounded by reporters who stopped asking shallow questions, Pamela made one final decision. She uploaded the contents of the Shadow Network and ECHO protocol to a public archive, all at once. Names, salaries, plans, hush agreements. She refused to redact a single name. The world responded instantly. News anchors froze mid-broadcast as the scale of cover-ups became too big to spin. Networks posted black screens in place of regular programming with 5 words. "We are reviewing our practices." Executives once cocky resigned by tweet. The most closely protected names became the most vulnerable overnight. But for Pamela and for Malcolm's legacy, the real reckoning was far more intimate. The day the verdict came, Cosby found guilty of conspiracy, obstruction, and accessory in relation to Warner's death. Pamela didn't cry. She held Malcolm's letter, the one she never let the cameras see, close to her heart. In every crack in her voice, the world recognized the sound not just of grief, but of triumph. Because for the first time in decades, a mother's love had shattered a fortress built on other people's pain. The victory was more than a courtroom win. University classes began teaching the Warner Files as the case that changed entertainment law. Lawmakers debated the Warner Act. Artists continued painting murals, each new portrait layered in flames and hope. A street in Malcolm's hometown was renamed Warner Way. And websites went up. Safe houses for whistleblowers, foundations for actors and assistants afraid to speak the truth. Even as Cosby sat in his cell, now the most famous mugshot on the planet, the impact was bigger than one downfall. It was the start of a new era. The last word belonged, as always, to Malcolm. Pamela, alone one autumn night, pressed play on finalfall.mp4, the last of his videos. His eyes, tired but no longer afraid, met her gaze through the screen. "Hey, Mom. I guess if you're watching, everything changed, or nothing did. But either way, I need you, need the world, to know heroes aren't the ones who survive the silence. It's the ones who dare to break it, no matter the cost. You always told me to speak when my voice shook. Well, my voice never shook more than this." He smiled, wider, braver than she ever remembered. "They tried to drown me, but I had you. And I know you won't let them erase me. I love you, Mom. I love you more than all the lies put together." The video ended. Pamela, strong as ever, shut the laptop softly, kissed his letter one last time, and knew his story wasn't just about pain. It was about power, the power of refusing to be erased. Now everywhere the conversation turns, on city buses, college campuses, anonymous corners of the web, someone invokes Malcolm's name. Not as a cautionary tale, but as a symbol of what happens when a single truth starts an avalanche. Cosby remains behind bars, but the world feels the aftershocks of his fall every day. What matters most is not just that justice was served, but that the machine which had traded in secrets and paid in pain finally cracked, letting sunlight flood a corner of the world that had always stayed too dark. Malcolm didn't just leave behind scandal. He left a map for anyone who ever thought telling the truth was hopeless, a blueprint for every mother willing to fight past exhaustion, every survivor who refused to be only a footnote. He proved that silence is dangerous not because it's empty, but because it's crowded with tomorrow's victims if left unchecked. So here's what you do now. If you made it this far, you know this isn't just a tale about power, pain, Hollywood, or hurt. It's a mission, a challenge. A scream that rose from the grave, loud enough to rattle the doors off every office where someone's planning the next cover-up. Speak his name, say it in the comments. Justice for Malcolm. Share this video. Mirror it, repost it, make it louder than every contract that tried to keep him quiet. If this video disappears, you know exactly why. The silence machine is still watching, but it can't erase all of us. Smash that like button. Subscribe so you never miss the truth they try to choke out. Turn on notifications, because what's coming next might make this story look gentle by comparison. They thought they could kill the message with the messenger, but now the mission is yours. And together, if we refuse to stop, the silence that cursed Malcolm might finally run out of places to hide.